Hi, Assalamualaikum. Good morning. Thank you for spending some time to join our discussion today. So, from this group discussion, our task is to review the movie Syriana and highlight the international themes and relate it with the theory that we have planned. Okay, so who would like to start this discussion first?
I like to start the discussion first.
All right.
Can I?
Okay, please.
Okay. You guys can hear me clearly, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In my opinion, a theme that is being highlighted is control. The oil industry has so much power that it could control everything in this world, especially in the Middle East, as portrayed in the movie. When I was watching the movie, I was unsure what Bennett Holiday's significance is. He's just, a lawyer. He's not a CIA agent or a prince. But the more I look into it, the more I realized that Bennett, the lawyer, had to do the worst job in the movie. He had to do the dirty work of making sure that the merging between the oil companies is successful and also following the rules of the Justice Department, which obviously didn't. The oil industry is still corrupted and there's always something shady a company is doing in order to gain power and control over the oil industry. Well, Bennett worked hard to please both Connex Kiln Oil and the Justice Department. Uh, and in fact, people around him look down on him because he's black, he's young, and they assume that he must not have much experience in dealing with the competitive oil industry. As an audience, I thought that Bennett is going to fail the merger because he saw all of this corruption happening in Connex Kiln Oil. It would be an ethical thing to do to expose these corrupted companies, which he did. But he had to hide it from the Justice Department, and from that we can see that Bennett Holiday succumbed to the control of these corrupted oil companies and ended up making them look good on paper and pass the Justice Department. And if we look into the real world, this is what people have to do every day. They have to shove their ethics and morality out the window because that is the way to succeed in big corporations. They had to prioritize profits over ethics, or else these multinational corporations will not have much, power to control this capitalist world. Corruption is the protection for the corrupted people. These big companies could get away with their unethical methods through the law that they have the power to bend. For instance, the oil industry is one of the reasons why public transportation in the US is so bad. And not just in the US, in developing countries like Malaysia, these oil companies want us to keep using cars and keep using the oil and keep ruining the planet with too much carbon emission. Well, why? So they could be rich and have control. That's what I think.
I totally agree with you, Farah. The United States now and then has always been one of the veto powers in controlling everything, and specifically the world market and economy as I watched the Syriana movie. Syriana has focused on petroleum politics and the global influence of the oil industry, and the Middle East oil has always been the pillar of US hegemony since now and then. In 2016, US net imports of petroleum from foreign countries were equal to about 25% of US petroleum consumption. The world's top three oil producers are Saudi Arabia, Russia, and US. About 78% of gross petroleum imports were crude oil in 2016, and the majority of that is refined in the US and then export to the other countries. That is to say, US refineries need Middle Eastern oil much more than US consumers. The price US citizens pay in pollution, corruption, wars, and the international arms industry is all for the benefit of big oil and for the US to stay dominant in oil industries. In Syriana, the capitalism of the US was portrayed successfully as the US was intimidated by the decision of of a Persian Gulf Emir Prince Nasir or Alexander Siddiq to grant an oil contract to the Chinese rather than to a US corporation, which is the Connect company. Capitalism means an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by a private owners for profit rather than by the state. The US wants to dominate and control the oil industry, so to compensate for its loss of Persian Gulf oil, Connect merged with another smaller oil company, which is Keelan, run by Jimmy Pope, who happens to just win a big oil contract in Kazakhstan. I believe all of these are related to the US control over almost everything around the world.
Yeah.
That's right, Husna. These oil companies will always find ways to control the business. If we look into the Middle East, the Mediterranean Sea to be exact, the search for gas fields in the Mediterranean is heating up territorial conflicts between Greece and Turkey and have existed for decades. As exploration missions have found a number of gas fields over the past years. Bordering states are arguing which gas field will belong to them in the exclusive economic zones in the sea. Both states had signed, agreements to delegitimize the other state's claim in the economic zone. Now, not just Greece or Turkey, Libya, Egypt, and Israel are dragged into this conflict, and each state wants some control over the Mediterranean Sea. So the oil industry is vital in this world, and whoever is in control, be it the states or oil companies, will have such great powers at the international level. That's why these oil companies or any multinational corporations will always care about profits more than being ethical or non-discriminative to their workers. In fact, they don't even care about the waste that they have created. We know that capitalism cannot exist without waste. So yeah, that's why I believe the first theme is control.
So I would like to add in the corruption theme. As we all know, corruption is a dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power, which typically involves bribery. So in the movie, the Emirates Foreign Minister Prince Nasser has granted natural drilling rights over to the Chinese company over the US mega giant Connect, which greatly upsets the US oil industry and the US government. So to compensate for its decreased production capacity, Connex initiates a shady merger with Keelan, which is a smaller oil company that recently won the drilling rights to key petroleum fields in Kazakhstan. So Bennett Holiday, who is an American attorney, was sent by the US Justice Department to oversee the messy merger and reflecting of any corruptions between the two oil companies. Later, Holiday meets with Dean Whiting, who is convinced that Keelan bribed someone to get the drilling rights in Kazakhstan. While investigating, the Connex Keelan records, he discovers a wire transfer that leads back to a transaction between a Texas oilman and Keelan colleague named Danny Dalton and a few of Kazakh officials. And when Holiday tells the Connex Keelan of his discovery, they pretended not to have known about it. So with this being said, we can see that corruption is very widespread and common in the oil, gas and mining sectors. And the most common types are bribery and grand corruption, as we can see in the movie Syriana.
I do agree with your point, Balqis. So corruption is indeed essential in this field because every country does corruption. Every country does inducement, right? So as I watched this movie, I realized that power plays a big role in international relations, such as the US oil company and the Middle East. So there is one scene in this movie which highlights the corruption theme where Prince Marshal was chosen to become the next king. So as we know, the Imam needs to choose one of his sons to become his successor, either it Prince Nasir or Prince Marshal. So compared to his brother, Prince Nasir has all the credibility to be a king and he cares about the economic condition of the country. So quality-wise, Prince Nasir is the best candidate for the throne. However, in spite of Prince Nasir's effort, the Emir chose Prince Marshal to become his successor because the US government has actually offered a deal to the former king, to the Emir, to have a profitable partnership with American business in future if Prince Marshal to be the king. So from this scene, we can see that the international organizations like Connex Oil can easily manipulate Prince Nasir for their own benefit as they have power and connections. So in this case, Connex Oil built the connection with the Emir and Prince Marshal to make sure they will still get the access for the oil sources in the Middle East, and at the same time, they can eliminate Prince Nasir because Prince Nasir, he granted the natural gas drilling rights to China, right? And by eliminating him, they can secure the US oil security. However, in reality, corruption is considered as normal in the petroleum politics field. So there is an article that I've read before stating that states exporting oil are 50% more likely to engage in international conflicts than their counterparts that do not produce energy resources. So corruption is actually common to oil and gas business because gas business is actually a complex industry, and they will have many business partners. They get in contact with so many government officials, and it includes a lot of agreement and process, and all of these needs will create an opportunity to engage with corruption. So for example, a case in Nigeria when 19 billions of oil revenues went missing through corruption in 2014 alone. That is a large amount, right? It affect the citizen as well. So when I think about it, it makes me sad because a country or the government should protect the people. But if the government itself neglect the people's right, it is as if we are staying with our own enemy. And yeah, that's all my point.
And I would like to add a bit to Shah's points. She stated that corruption is considered as normal in the petroleum politic field, and it is true. It is a criminal act, but research by MOHD in January 2020 showed that the understanding of corruption has slowly evolved from criminal behavior characterizing the outset of developing economies to widespread governance methods, alternative to formal practices. So the organization or people with power especially do not see corruption as exploitations, and then they rather see corruption as them giving help in the growth of the economy.
Yes, Anna, I would like to quote Danny Dalton, a Texas oilman and Killen colleague. He tells Bennett Holiday, the lawyer investigating his oil company's merger, "We have laws against it precisely so we can get away with it. Corruption keeps us safe and warm. Corruption is why you and I are prancing around here instead of fighting over scraps of meat out in the street. Corruption is why we win." This quote not only reflects what's happening in the movie but also in real life, as corruption is counted as a common practice in expanding the market and dominating the economy.
Yeah, I mean, you have the points, control and corruption, and I think I want to add one more point. Do you remember the part of this Pakistani migrant worker? His name is Wasim, if I'm not mistaken. Kan? He did a suicide attack on a Connex kiln tanker using an explosive from the missing Tehran missile. I believe this is the social effect of oil politics in Arab countries on migrant workers. Unemployment, poverty, exploitation. Well, look at the chronology. He went to the Persian Gulf, right, with his dad to get a job, but instead they got dismissed. It is not only them two, but all of them, all the workers there. His dad is planning to bring his wife to the country, but, well, without money, they cannot do anything. Being unemployed, it's not a pleasing state in a foreign country. But when Wasim is trying to seek for a job, he gets discriminated against just because he cannot speak Arabic fluently. And feeling pressured, Wasim joined a madrasah to improve his Arabic language, but then he gets scammed in a suicide attack school camp, I would say. And well, can you see the relations? Wasim lost his job in the oil company, desperate to get a job, he then joined a madrasah and suicide attack on the oil company ship. This is the social effect of oil politics. Parties that are not satisfied with the action of the foreign oil company taking their resources will always exist and waiting for their chances to get revenge. And who is the victim? Yes, of course, the migrant workers, right? Might also hold grudges on the oil company. They are one of the groups that can easily be exploited. They got no citizenship and etc. Right? And they lost their job, have no money, are desperate, and are willing to do anything. It's always the migrant workers now who will inevitably get affected by the oil politics here. Well, what I can conclude is the welfare of the migrant workers there is not being taken care of, and unfortunately, that is the reality. And I would say Malaysia did a good job in taking care of our migrant workers, right?
I would like to differ. So when we talk about the operation of organizations, especially by big corporations, workers are always the one who are most impacted, and they are impacted badly and never greatly. So the upper authorities simply do not care about the mistreatment or exploitation faced by the workers, let alone migrant workers. The superiority and the entitlement these bosses have do not exude any empathy towards migrant worker. They do not have empathy in themselves. This is because they have the you come to me to work, you need the money, then just face whatever you need to go through, that kind of mentality. So the mistreatment of migrant workers sadly do exist as we speak. Why do I say so? Because there are plenty of newspapers headlines on this issue, and Malaysia is not excluded, and it is a widespread problem. One of the examples that I can give is about Tesco's ill treatment towards their migrant workers. Tesco's migrant workers in its stores and distribution centers in Malaysia were facing abuse. Despite having decent employment laws, Malaysia has been on a global slavery index in a number of industries, including the plantation and electronic sector. The abuse faced by these migrant workers included passport retention, unexplained and illegal wage reductions, heavy indebtedness to labor brokers, and excessive work, overtime work. And why is that? Because our Employment Act is not enforced in incidents that involve migrant workers. This is where membership comes in hand in a world of global migration. It's either you have citizenship or you will not be taken seriously, which I think it's absurd because humanity is above all. And it is also hypocritical that corporations, we especially advocate human rights, cannot do the same to the migrant workers. In the movie Syriana, there was a labor abuse scene, if you notice. However, that footage, that 2-minute footage of showing Asian oil workers in an specified Arab country being fired and then later beaten by police as they queued for work were noticeably absent from cinemas in Dubai when it was released in 2009. This is because the authority in the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, have cut a number of scenes from Syriana over fears that the film starring was too realistic in its depiction of Arab states mistreating poor migrant workers. And human rights groups frequently condemn the authorities in Dubai and neighboring Arab states for the poor conditions migrant workers live in. The censorship was necessary for Dubai, because violent illegal strikes by construction workers in Dubai was exposed a month before the movie was released. And It revealed the less attractive side of the country's booming economy. And would I say because they were finally empathizing with the migrant workers? Most definitely not. They were worried about their economy incomes. And because of the greed for oil, especially portrayed in this story, the migrant workers and their families are the victims. Their hard work is mainly to fulfill others' needs, which is the exploiter, or this is known as capitalism. And we cannot deny that capitalism has always relied on migrant workers. And socialism, and this is where socialism should take place, but it was never there, because socialism is supposed to reduce disparity in wealth, all social ranks and classes, but when it is overpowered by greed and money, um, socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor is a classical political economic argument which states that in advanced capitalist societies, state policies assure that more resources flow to the rich than to the poor. And this is what the reference, the rich become richer and the poor become poorer, is all about. It has become more relevant now. And also, I would like to add to Wahidah's point about Wasim, the character in the Syriana, the Pakistani worker who was angered by the way workers from Indian subcontinent are treated, and he joined an Islamic terrorist group and became a suicide bomber. As much as I see it as a Western propaganda and ideology about Islam in the movie, I will see it in a different view. And again, back to my point, and Wahida's as well, on migrant workers are the victims, is that migrant workers are victims in oil politics. But can their anger be felt? Yes. But does it affect the exploiters? No. Because the exploiter move on with their life, which is full of power, full of money, full of glamour, full of entitlement, and continue exploiting other workers that they have. And the victims can never truly be heard. So for me.
Yeah. So, yeah, can anyone conclude this discussion?
I can, but does anyone have anything to add?
No.
No? Okay. So I think we can conclude this.
I have something to say.
Okay.
Sorry. If we actually look in the movie, yeah, the migrant workers are somehow just, how do I say this? The migrant workers are unsatisfied with the oil companies that they're working with, because suddenly out of nowhere they have no jobs. But really, it's just to make their lives better. Like in the madrasah, they sell French fries and they can read the Quran and stuff. That's why, that is actually the main reason why the Wasim joined the madrasah, because he just wants to have some French fries. Apart from being and having no jobs, but he just wants to have a better life.
I mean, they're desperate, so they just grab.
Yes, I agree.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to have a better life, right? So, anyone else like to add or anything?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, can we conclude this? Is it okay to conclude this?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can all agree. That all three themes that were mentioned by three of us, which is corruption, control, and also migration and membership, is that they are all related to hegemony. So, frankly speaking, when it's about oil politics and power, hegemony is always inevitable. So hegemony heavily involves a system of political control that places one especially powerful country in a position of dominance over other countries. And not only that, hegemony is also defined as domination by one social group over another. And hegemony really has more cons than pros. Well, hegemony is beneficial for the economy, but never to the ones being exploited. But why does hegemony seem like such a need in today's economic development? This is because without tangible hard power, it is unlikely that rival states will be listening or be willing to listen to and cooperate with other states. That is why every state is competing with each other to gain power, to show that they are powerful. And when materialism overwhelms humanity, people become selfish and stop caring. That's all.
Yeah, okay. So I think that's all.
Yes, thank you for today's discussion,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you
Thank you,
too.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.